Welcome, my name is Chris, and this week I have a lesson that will benefit anyone wanting to understand harmony or ear training better. I love this concept. I've been talking about a lot on this channel, and I think this understanding and this analogy that is kind of based on my own experience will really help you. It works on many levels. I've used this concept of a swimming pool before in lessons to talk about sounds or concepts that are on the either shallow side of the pool, meaning they're more easier to grasp, or the deeper side of the pool, meaning they're a little harder to grasp or hear or whatever. This really works as an overall analogy because it works at the ear training level of stuff you can start to hear easier and then develop your ear and get to those deeper stages. It also works in a general way when learning music and your understanding of different keys. Of course, learning a key that's easier and working in one key or maybe 3 easy chords is going to be simpler. You're going to be able to not drown or slip as easily than working on more complex harmony. I love all kinds of music, so I'm not talking about which one is better or worse. I think that's the beautiful part here, is just having a lot of different sounds. And understanding that these sounds can be put in a framework like this, I think, is very important. It is not arbitrary. It's not trivial. That is one of the reasons why I'm so compelled to teach, is because there's such confusion about this stuff that I often see. And I'm trying to help you out today discern for the future, because it's not going to happen just today. It will take time, but you will be able to discern your path forward here and build on some previous success. And you'll be swimming in the deep end if you want to, or you can just hang out in the shallow end. Before you know it, you'll start to have a really good sense of the certain kinds of harmony or sounds in songs that you'll come to expect. And you can train this, and it gets deeper and deeper. And that's what my whole channel is about. So I hope you like and subscribe if this is helpful. Let's jump in. I want to walk you through shallow to deep, what I'm talking about here, and hopefully give you a better understanding overall of how harmony works. The 2.5 feet section. So this is the open, welcoming, safe part of the pool. I put 1 and 5 there because they represent the easiest, most common chord progression. 1 is the stable home chord, right? So if this is our 1, this is our home. We're going to probably start here and come back here. And this not only means that we're using certain chords, but also that everything is very predictable, meaning the timing is predictable. Think like nursery rhymes, think folk songs. This is the easiest change to go from here to here, which is the ultimate tension, right? We need to resolve this. The notes in the chord want to go somewhere. This wants to go here, right? A cool concept from jazz that might help you here is to think of harmony as either on or off sometimes. This is our on harmony, meaning that we're home. Everything feels good. We can stay here. We could just call this and vamp this chord if we want to, right? And our off harmony is the thing that needs resolved. It's the needed tension. If we don't have tension in a story, it is boring. And we need that tension to finally put us back home. But having like basically 2 characters in the story, an on character and an off character, it's not boring outright because it can work, because you can vary other things. How you structure ththese chords can really have an effect. So if I hang on that 5 chord for a long time, like Mahler liked to do, the composer, he would hang on for like 10 minutes and then finally hit you with this. And it was like the most magnificent, marvelous thing ever because of that tension elongation. For ear training purposes, try to find songs and use every opportunity to practice hearing easy harmony. Not a lot of modern tunes do this, where it's just 1 and 5. It is real 2D kind of basic, simple harmony. Again, a song could be complex in other ways. So listen out for these colors. If something is weird, like the phrasing or the timing, which can definitely change, or maybe the colors, right? It could be, right, which is a little bit more obscure. I would put something like this in a deeper level of the pool because it's not the basic sound of 1 or 5, right? This very on and off sound. Here's in one more key, like 1, and the 5 would sound like Johnny Cash or something, right? Right, that 5 chord. Right, it's just the simplest thing. Going a little deeper, we have the 3 foot section. 1, 4, and 5. The drawbacks to the 2.5 foot section, if you dig harmony and want to kind of go deeper or listen to more complex things or play more complex things or write more complex things if you're a songwriter, is that 1 and 5 only has 2 colors to that, so we have to kind of be creative. So adding a 4 chord gives us another kind of chord. The 4 chord is another type of chord as well. There's a thing called chord function that kind of explains why chords act the way they do. And the 4 chord is a subdominant chord. The 1 chord is a type of tonic chord. It's the main tonic chord, the home chord. And the 5 chord is a dominant chord, which means it wants to go back home. It's kind of this ultimate tension that has to be resolved. And the 4 chord, I call it the plot chord. It kind of wants to go away from home. It's very inviting. It's softer to go back to home. It doesn't need to go back to home, but it can. I'll play it a few times here. With 1, 4, and 5, we're getting into thousands and thousands of tunes. How many times have we heard these? We call these primary chords, typically. And every note of the scale, you can harmonize with one of those chords. So that's kind of nice, right? You see how you can tell a big story with that? You can go away, you can stay there, and then we could have 1, 5, 1. There's all this story element here too I'm trying to get you to see with this understanding of thinking about chords at different levels. Like this is a very simple story. This is a little bit more complex story because now we have 3 characters. And 4 and 5, interestingly, if you go to a piano and play middle C, which was this, if you go up 4 notes, you get F. And if you go down 4 notes, you get G. So they're kind of equidistant from C. So it's kind of like, do I need to go away from home and go out into the world? Or do I need to go back home? Isn't that interesting? So like that's a 4th. And this is also a 4th motion, G to C. G, A, B, C. Isn't that cool? So with the 4 there's a lot of color opportunity. You can play many songs with 1, 4, and 5. Most songs, if it's a general minor or major vibe and there's not a ton of color or non-diatonic chords, which we're going to get to later on, you can play with 1, 4, and 5. You can kind of make it work. These are really good to understand and learn in different keys. If you play a guitar, learn G, C, and D. Start to tag them. 1, 4, 5, 4, 1, 4, 5, 4, 4, 1, right? And you'll start to hear those in songs, and you can start to do that in other keys and learn songs in this way. That's the feeling you want. You want that comfort level. You want to feel like you could just hang out there all day long. And again, some songs will just use 1, 4, and 5 and be very complex in other ways. It's not typical, but these are such important chords to understand. And even when we have other weird chords, they are based on these, and these are still common. It's all the same water, essentially. Like the shallow side of the pool and the deep side of the pool are always mixing together. You have a lot of 1, 4, 5, and you might have one of these chords down here and then back to 1, 5, 1. That's maybe a good way to think of it, is like it's a very cumulative thing, and it's a progressive thing that just keeps on layering and layering down. We have now 1, 4, 5, and 6. And I want to talk about those briefly alone, and then we'll add 2 and 3. 1, 4, 5, and 6, I typically call primary chords these days more than 1, 4, and 5. These 4 chords are beloved by many modern songwriters. They really work well together in a phrase length, because usually we like 4 measures per phrase, and we have 4 chords, and you can really play them in any order, and they sound good. Next week, I'll be releasing a quiz on hearing 1, 4, 5, and 6 with some audio examples, giving you a chance to guess. So make sure and like and subscribe so you can see that when I release it, and I'll be having more quizzes on the deeper levels as we go on here. Here's some 1, 4, 5, and 6 together so you can kind of hear this. This is so many songs. It's this, right? It's that, 6. That's 1, 5, 6, 4. You could start on 6. Hopefully this feels deeply familiar, right? You really can't escape these 4 chords in a modern sense, right? What's another example of 1, 5, 6, 4? All Too Well. That's in C. Right? So many songs do this. These are 4 really good chords to memorize in a key. In the key of G, they'd be G, right? And they count up with the alphabet. When you're figuring this out at first, and it's very, very cold because you're like, it's very unfamiliar, right? And that's okay until it's not unfamiliar, and then it's familiar. You think of the letters, G, and then just think up alphabetically. After G, we don't have H, we have A, right? And we don't have to think about any of the sharps or flats, typically, in these easier guitar keys. So G, A, B, C. So if G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, C is 4. And be able to think of letters like that in your head is extremely helpful here. All this is relative, right? It's all relative. You have to know what I'm talking about, do some research on, what 1, 4, and 5 are, and learn just one set of them. And then start to think about the letters in terms of like a piano And guitarists, I know we suffer from this and it's really tough, but it's really helpful, and you'll suffer a lot less if you just memorize, oh yeah, G's 1, C's 4, D's 5, and it's never going to change. The more you can stretch that letter mental stuff too is really good. I play piano, so it's kind of a hack for this, but I'd be able to kind of go like G, B, A, C, B, D, C, E, jump around like that, G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F sharp. I'm using my fingers too, like piano. So any of that is really helpful. You can also just use your voice to practice hearing, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, and 6 are all next to one another, which is nice. Practice starting on different chords, like start on 5. Let's do it here. So 5. So that could go anywhere, right? I could go to 6, 5, 1. That's cool. 4, 6. That's interesting, right? 5, 6, 4, 1. How about 5, 4, 6, 1? You don't always have 4 chords there, but just be like listening for those as a group and practice those on your instrument. And at the very least, if you're not interested in ear training, knowing that the 4-foot section-ish has these chords a lot, and knowing that the 2 and the 3, we'll talk about in a second, knowing that they are played together a lot and that they are good to know in a key together, just on a pragmatic level, is very helpful, I think. Not even talking about the ear training component. But if your ear will probably go like mine did, it might go through these like insane levels. We have the 2 and the 3 chord here. Those are also diatonic. Over here, I'll introduce this briefly. This is a crazy chart I made of what on the far left are diatonic chords of the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 12 keys. There's 12 sets of those. And that's every sound you've ever heard is represented right here, in a general sense. Then we have some of the next chords that are deeper here, the 2, 3, 4. We're going to go over those in a second. That's kind of showing you how music can get more and more complex. And this is all related back to that functional stuff. This is kind of talking about music that follows a certain rule or expectation based on prior music. This is always changing. Like these levels are kind of always changing culturally. What is very easy 3-foot side of the pull or 4-foot side of the pull might have been very strange and dissonant and like on the deep end of the pull 500 years ago. Our musical system's not that old. So this stuff is definitely in flux. There's a tune that randomly was on my head this morning that has a 2 chord. 2 Ghosts by Harry Styles. I think it's in the key E, and it goes like 1, 2. It goes to inversion of 1, 3. And then later on, there's a good example, right, of all this stuff. 4. And when I'm hearing the song, I don't have it memorized. I'm just listening to the chords via ear. And it walks down from 6 down to 2, I think. Right? 6, 5, 4, holds on that. 1. That's the utility of this, is like thinking very generally about chords means I can reference like, oh yeah, I know that song. Like my ears know it because they know numbers, because I've thoroughly digested this stuff. I not only know on my instrument that these chords go together, and I know that this is the 1, this feeling is 1, this feeling's 2, this feeling's 3. How about like My Girl? I think that's in C, maybe? 1, 2, 4, 5, 1, and 2, and 4, 5, 1. Right? And then 2. 2. And the 2 is kind of like the 4. That'd be like a subdominant, but we'll talk about that more in the function video. These chords do different things, but you can also learn how to recognize that exact sound and also recognize the bass. 1, 2, 5, right? 4, 6, 6. How about 5? 5, 5. Wherever you can hear it, right? And sing it. Very helpful. I generally don't teach the 7 a lot because it's a really rare color in our musical culture right now. So going 1 to 6 and be able to play those in different keys on your guitar or in whatever instrument, piano, is super, super good to do. And to think in this way maybe of we're slowly adding more and more colors, right? We're getting into almost all the diatonic chords here. Jumping to the 5-foot section, which is right next to the 2.5-foot section. Minor keys. So I put this here just because it's not that common. in modern music, you do hear them for sure. And I'm talking about like popular music. There are, of course, tunes in minor keys though. So that is kind of a more refined thing to start to listen for that minor 1. And actually you can go kind of through this thing again with minor keys in mind. It's kind of cool, right? So you can think, okay, can I play minor 1 and 5, or can I hear it? So can I hear that sound of going like in, what's that tune? Exit music for a film. So good, right? 6, or minor 1, and then it goes to the 5, back to the 1. It does that little suspension. So that's in a minor key. House of the Rising Sun, just to give you a lot of examples, is in a minor key. We kind of go through the chords. We have a few different chords in the key. Then the 5, we need to answer this, right? We can't leave it hanging. Go back to 1, right? And it resolves to minor 1. So you can start to recognize those colors too. You can go through 1, 4, and 5. Minor 1, minor 4, major 5 typically in Western music. And that stuff does get broken for sure, but that's the most natural story again. The more you work on major keys, minor keys do start to clarify as well. But if you're really into minor or darker sounds or tend to gravitate towards these things, then spend extra time on them, right? Play like A minor, B diminished, or some kind of B chord, C, D minor, E major, F major. You could do G sharp diminished. You could do G major, the flat 7, back to the 1, right? And those are all certain colors you can figure out as well. Most of the time with minor, it's pretty simple. It's not quite as expansive as major. Minor keys might kind of borrow chords from the relative major. So I'll have a video about more of that as well, how to think about that. Be aware of that with minor keys, that can happen. And it will clarify with more practice. It's just about learning how to see new colors and feel new feelings you've never felt before, which takes practice, but is definitely possible. Now onto the 6-foot corner of the pool, we're going to add some non-diatonic chords. All that means is that now we're not on this level of harmony. These are like the basic players that come from, just a quick review, a major scale. We take every other note. We take 3 of them. So we take the first note, the third note, and the 5th note, and we make it the 1 chord. We put those together. It's kind of like, instead of playing them like this, we just stack them. And then we do that to the 2, 4, and 6, the 3, 5, 7, the 4, 6, 1, the 5, 7, 2, the 6, 3, or 6, 1, 3, and 7, 2, and 4. What would that be right up here? And then back to the 1, 3, 5. And that's how we get these sounds. It is kind of arbitrary how it all happened, but here we are. Now moving into the next level a little deeper, these chords do not belong in the key. They're borrowed from other keys. A good example of this might be a secondary dominant. And that is the concept of, in a certain key of music, playing the 5 chord, the dominant chord, right, primarily, of not the 1, but of another chord in the key. So let's say I play the dominant chord of the 5. So if I want to play the 5 of this, I'm now thinking the 5 chord of the 5 chord. I'm kind of treating this as a 1 chord temporarily. So if you know if G's 1, what's 5? If you hopefully know G, A, B, C, D, right? Star Wars. So if we're in the key of C, if I want to play the 5 of G to strengthen going to G, which might be a kind of a cool sound, it would sound like this. I might go D to G. Remember, we're here. So it would sound like this in a song, like, oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Right? We've all heard that sound, right? And this is an extremely functional thing to do. It creates a lot of cool movement, and we have extra tension. We could do this a lot. You could go 1, and I could play the 5 of the 4 chord. So I played C, C7, F. And then I could play the 5 of the 5 chord. D, maybe over F sharp to lead to G. How about the 5 of the 6? Now we have the major 3, right? Isn't that cool? How about the 5 of the 2 chord? So instead of this, which is totally fine. That's a vibe. How about this? Or maybe it kind of elongates and opens up this music, and it creates more tension, more color, more leading. And the more leading you have, the more your ear wants to really hear it. And there's a lot of personality to the music. Not a lot of music does this in a modern sense, actually, to kind of really take your ear on a journey. And I think that's because it's more about aesthetics, and it's about like maybe being accessible and not demanding too much from the listener. Because when you start to hear stuff like our ears like kind of pulled along, right? It's like, whoa, where are we going? Right? And there's a lot of... So it kind of gets into harmonically thick waters to do this. Not every non-diatonic chord does that. Some of them, like minor 4 or minor 5, are borrowed from the minor, the parallel minor, C minor. And those I love so deeply. I'll do a video on those in the future. That would sound like this. If you're in C, we have F minor, the minor 4. There's a subreddit for this. Isn't that crazy? And I'm a part of it. 1 to minor 4. So if we hear 4, or here's another key. How about here? How about right here? I'm just kidding. Is it in here? Yeah, it is. Later on, right here. There. So major 4, minor 4, 1, and it often does that. It will go major 4, minor 4, 1 at the end of a tune. All I want for Christmas. That's that, right? It's the Christmas chord. There's a certain sound to that. That's the whole point of ear training, right? There's a certain feeling. And to me, it's a feeling. It might not be a feeling to you. Everyone's different, but whatever works for you, right? And the memory, if you think C minor is minor 4 of G, that alone is useless, right? It's very two-dimensional. But if you tag it and you go, okay, 4 minor, 1, and you start to notice that in songs, when you've got like, you're in the key of A and you have a D minor, A. You're like, oh man, that's a beautiful sound. So melancholy, so kind of mysterious. Isn't that gorgeous? All these have a certain sound and you can investigate them. We have some other was flat 2. That'd be like 1 to flat 2. Very dissonant, right? Or very kind of close. Very Spanish, right? Flat 3 as well. That's flat 3. Flat 2, right? I love those. Those really take us out because they're very far away harmonically. We are a long way away from 1 and 5. And actually, it's kind of cool. If you look at a circle of fifths, far away being just a far away on the other side of the circle. Like, let's say we're in C. We have C, and a flat 3 is E flat, 3 places away on the circle. So it's quite a far distance. Let's say we have this sharp 4 kind of diminished chord. If I'm going like 1, and I play sharp 4 to 5, or 1 over 5 or something. Or if I play, what's another one? This one. I put that on there too. Half diminish, which I love this sound. That's a certain feeling. That could go to 4, to 3, to 6, to major 6, which is a secondary dominant to this. That's a 5, and so we still come back to 1, right? We just kind of like swam all the way through this, back to 1. So that's a kind of hopefully a helpful way to think about harmony. There's a certain thing I'm trying to capture here that I've never heard talked about, and I've never talked about it, so it's hard to find the words. Perhaps it's this sentiment that no music is random, just like language, just like food. It's like we don't put random stuff in our food. We don't say random words. Music has meaning to it. This is also cultural as well. And it's also trivial, right? It's also like we're just talking about sounds. So it's kind of amazing that you can have this objective seeming thing where I can hear a song with certain colors and I know that it's kind of a gospel song. Maybe it's all 1, 4, and 5 and also a 3. So I could have a song going, I'll buy that, right? Sounds good. And that's kind of the journey my ear took, was this journey. And I've just now been able to articulate it, is that I was able to start to recognize some of these simpler sounds using songs I've played and just knowing, having this feeling that, yeah, 1 and 5 go together. And when I was learning songs by ear, I would look to the 5 chord first. I would look to the 4 chord. Then I would start to look to maybe the 6 chord, the 2 and the 3. And this is also how I learned chords in these groups in different keys on guitar and on piano, and I was able to think more fluently in more keys. So I had the ability to do this and play it in different keys, right? Like I'm doing now, to go through all these kind of expected sounds as well as some of these other sounds. And the more you know this stuff, when you're learning songs, you're going to be doing this anyways, right? You'll be like learning in this way, formulating these kind of contextual I think, really helpful understandings that will help you grow as a musician. It gives you a framework, right? It gives you a sense of, oh, this isn't random. Your ear will thank you. It will have a sense of upward mobility because you can understand these more shallow parts of the pull and how to serve the song there, as well as getting into these deeper and deeper colors. Moving on to level 7. Here I put colors, extensions, and more non-diatonic. What I mean by this is the more subtle elements of chord extensions and colors. This is why country sounds different from jazz, right? That we could have 1, 4, and 5 in a country song. And I could even make those sound a little bit more country by add 1, 7, right? That's the 5 of the 4 chord that goes there. And then I could maybe even add that bright 2 chord, 5 of 5, and then we're back to 1. Very unassuming, very plain, very straight to the point. If I start to have sounds like this, and then let's say a 2 chord instead of a 4 chord, because that is typically the subdominant chord a lot of jazz tunes use, right? We've heard that a lot, right? Something like that. And this 5 chord, it's all about tension, right? So what if I add a lot of tension? And this chord really doesn't want to sit there, right? It wants to resolve. You could even have a chord resolve in jazz. This is not a jazz lesson, but a chord resolve that is tense and resolved. So this, for instance, instead of this, doing right? Like this is like a major 7 sharp 5, kind of a spacey, kind of John Williams-esque chord. So that's a certain feeling too. And you can start to identify that color in this chord. It might go, 1. It might go augmented to 1, 6, to 1, 7. Have we heard that before? Maybe a major 4, minor 4, 1. Right? That's the reason for that progression. There was a little movement of a note chromatically. So that's a good way to think of this. I love the Jacob Collier quote, "There are no right or wrong notes, just notes that have or haven't found their consequence." And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. You have to have a reason to play a note or to hear a chord. It has to speak to you, right? To even perceive what sound this is in the key of C. Well, you have to be into it. You have to be interested, right? You have to give your attention to it. And you might be able to lean in and be like, okay, like 1, 7, 6, 5, sharp 4, sharp 4, 4, 1, right? So you might want to hear that fall like that. There's a beautiful Elliott Smith song that does this called Clementine. It goes like 1, sharp 4, 4. That really nice. So it's such a color, right? So it's just about getting curious about what colors really speak to you. This is also a lesson that could be applied to rhythm and melody and other stuff about music. I'll be doing that more in the future as well. There are a lot of colors in certain genres of music, and other genres of music, it's a lot more simple, right? Some genres of music don't even like to mess with major or minor colors at all. It might just be more like... And this kind of gets into non-diatonic chords, right? Like anything that's like real chromatic, like you might get more non-diatonic chords that are not even over here. There are more chords that we could play. We could play just to get weird, we could play like a minor flat 6 chord, which would be like in the key of G, E flat minor, which is quite a ways away. Whoa, right? There's like nothing in common whatsoever. There's an F sharp in both, so I could go like this, and then I actually really like that, right? So that might be the reason for that. And this could go to let's say it goes up to E minor. And then that's interesting, right? This really throws my ear off. So it's kind of cool. So that's the art here, is how do we tell a story that speaks to our soul and also is conventional enough to be understood. And it doesn't always have to be conventional or try to be conventional, but that is a good kind of rule of thumb here. That's what I'm trying to approach when I play music and when I'm working on new stuff, when I'm writing stuff. I'm trying to make sure I can really hear what I'm doing and understand it, and it feels authentic. And then whatever goes is cool. Every level of the pull is cool. I love playing gigs where I play a lot of 1, 4, and 5. And it's just about like the feeling of that, the lyrics. It's about the whole experience. It's about the intent of the music. And then music that has a lot of color like this, like a lot of Beatles tunes have a lot of cool changes that have outside of this key stuff. Radiohead, lots of bands do this, right? Where we add some color. And then getting into this is just even going deeper and deeper down that. Really listen to extensions to be able to hear these different colors. The 3-foot section, just a reminder, drops off very swiftly into the 7-foot section, so be just careful. Okay, moving on to 8 feet. We have all of the above and depth of detail added. This is maybe the level of a really great, accomplished pro musician and many genres of music. They know how to really deliver at many levels, and that might be talking about their ear training abilities or just their ability to really deliver stylistically in a certain genre of music. So session musicians, people that can really play many styles of music and really serve the song where it's not about them at all, right? That's a total commitment to the language. So that's how I think about this level. Depth of detail is just talking about the subtle stuff that you start to learn. I had a student last semester that was playing a lot of Jackson 5. A lot of their music and a lot of R&B music uses this color, which I love. In the key of C, they use the color of a 5 chord, but really a lot of sus stuff. It's like a 5/7 with the 4 added and the 2, and we also have the 7. Easier to think of it as a 4 chord, F, over the G. So 4 over 5. So that sound, right? That sound. What if I do a 4 minor even? Right? And that sounds so great. So that's what I'm talking about here, is that there's these subtle things like that. Like knowing that, oh, if I'm playing like a Carole King tune or Jackson 5 or anything that's kind of got some soul to it, that feels really, really good. And it's often what we want. It's not as bright as this. Or as on the nose is like 5/7 going to 1. Or as colorful as, like jazz or whatever, right? So there's all these dialects, and you start to be able to contextualize them in a framework. That's why I'm teaching this video, is to give you hopefully a framework to pile these things together. This is really not about memorization to me. It's more about like a learning and acquisition, living the stuff, letting your body digest it, letting your mind digest it. And you can accompany all this, of course, with learning an instrument. That's the way it's done, and that's the way you can do it by yourself. You have to really utilize existing music here and start simple. We can't learn to swim here, right? Unless you want a lot of trauma later on in your life. You have to learn how to swim back here, right? You have to really like work your way through, get your legs, figure out how to move around in the water, how to hear stuff. When you get over here, 8-foot section, there's a lot of freedom here, and you can play a lot of music because you kind of understood of all the other stuff, all the basics, all the basic sounds. These are so integrated, so just acquired. They're not even in your head. You can just play them. And then here, you know these well. You know these well in a certain genre or many genres of music. It took a lot of time in my case to be very authentic here with what we learn. I'd be afraid that if I was making music up that wouldn't be accepted by somebody, or they wouldn't think it would work in a certain genre of music. All these kind of made up arbitrary rules. The reason there are conventions is because we like stories that have happy endings. We like predictability, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's songs that come out like Bohemian Rhapsody that just turn everything upside down, right? And at the end of the day, you can do literally whatever you want forever, and you can just justify it by the experience of doing it and the sound. There's just no right or wrong here, and I want to talk about this a lot more in the future. I think it's an extremely big problem in the music community, and our culture generally misunderstands this. It thinks music is a product. It thinks it's just about convention. It thinks it's just about judging what you do off of others, judging what you do off of others' approval. It's just not about any of that stuff. And here we're trying to get a little bit more authentic with how we even listen, how we think about it, to not be too fragile with any of our rules or think that it has to go a certain way. It just doesn't have to go a certain way. It can go many different ways. And you could have music that you hate that engages with very simple sounds or very obscure sounds, or maybe a combination of both. It maybe is changing genres, and it might not be your thing, and that is a beautiful thing. It's not for you. It's just not for you. And it's for somebody else. Just like language, just like food, just like lots of things in life, like a book, right? You can't write a book that's for everyone. Like there's many books that are very popular these days that I would never, ever, ever spend my time on reading. And yet if someone finds joy from that and is edified, that is a right and a freedom that I want to promote. I want to promote the doing of those things with our very little free time and attention. We really need to be investing in things that make us feel good, that make us feel more human, more like ourselves, more expressive. And that's why I'm teaching all these things, is because this is really a way for you to discover yourself as well. As your own tastes even change through this process of maybe getting into music that you would have typically considered. If you know some of these levels exist, that might be easier to do in the future and to have the context that I'm laying out. One thing I forgot in level 6 are key changes. That is a, semi-common thing in music. It's not too uncommon. It would be very weird to do it into a key that's not close, meaning it's not like C and doing the old pop music key change and going up a half step or going up a whole step and just like raising the energy. We all know that sound, hopefully. We've all heard that kind of epic key change before. There's some songs that will do it in much more subtle ways where you're here and all of a sudden we're here. And we maybe use that E to go from 1 like that, which is so interesting, right? And then we might be in this key for a second. We might go to 3, to the 4, to the 2. And let's say I go back to the 6 of key of C, the minor 6. So I went to 6 minor, and now we're here. We could go back to here, right? And isn't that cool? You could just really move between different keys. So I'll talk more about that in the future. It is kind of hard to feel into that at first and to recognize that. But I would say that you'll start to recognize chords in groups, like you'll see G, C, and D, and all of a sudden you'll see it like a E and not E minor. And you'll realize, okay, maybe something's happening here. And maybe you see chords in the key of E after that. And also you'll just learn how to feel the feeling of 1 deeper. And that feeling of 1 is very telling. There's something about home that you like, once you see it, you just know it. That's the feeling I get when I hear a tonic chord, and that's what I'm trying to convey here. So hopefully I can be successful. One final level is the ocean. There's a little pipeline to the ocean in the swimming pool. So extra dangerous. Don't take your kids here. I put this on here though to represent music that really doesn't care about any of this. And this is really the part that we really can't train too much on. You can train on how to play that kind of music, but it's more about like untraining your body and giving yourself a lot of freedom. Maybe exploring certain idiosyncratic things. The reason I put this on there is just to briefly talk about our culture's misunderstanding of it. If people make weird music that breaks the rules or challenges certain things or has chords that are outside of the key a lot, they are doing it for a reason they feel convicted to. They just want to make it. And that's why it was made. It's more about exploration. You will hear it some in popular music. You might hear it in a rhythmic sense, or maybe a melodic sense, or a production way of just really challenging things and not going off of something old, but really exploring the edges of music. That might or might not be for you. But the beautiful thing about the harmonic swimming pool is that you can hang out anywhere. Really, you can just hang out in the shade and take it easy. Or if you want to go diving deep, challenging yourself a little bit, you can do that too. I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to go and let you go today. I'll be back with a lot more on this. I'll have a quiz on ear training 1, 4, 5, and 6 soon. And we will also be exploring in this channel more and more of these elements, right? Maybe not into that yet, but everything else we'll get to. And I'll start to get into more of this as teaching on this channel. I've started with these chords. I have a video about how they make me feel I would check out. I'll link below. And then we're going to get more and more into these kind of colors that are conventional enough to study like this. That's why I'm teaching this. It's not useless information. I use this constantly. I will hear that chord in a song. I'll hear that chord in a song. I will feel the 5 minor in a certain key, and I know left brain information on how to play that. So I can correlate the two. I'll be like, oh yeah, we're playing Ordinary World by Duran Duran, and we're playing it in E. And then I have to go to that minor 5, which I think that song has a minor 5. So this all comes together, right? I'm just trying to give you a framework here as you explore this stuff in the future. I hope you join me again for future lessons. Please like and subscribe again. It really helps me out. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or comments about this concept, and I hope to refine this over the years. I think this is a helpful analogy that I'm going to try to develop more and clarify for you. So until next time, I will see you then. Thanks.